Like to, Captain, are we ready to go as yet, or do you need to?
One quick second.
Okay.
We are good, sir.
Okay. I'd like to formally call the May Board of Police Commission meeting to order. If we could please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
liberty
and
justice
for all. Thank you. Hopefully, at least from my perspective, hopefully, beginning next month, we're going to be able to resume on-site meetings in the police commission training, the police department training room. And I know, certain dress apparel may be different, a little more formal when we're in a public spot. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it. Particularly, it might be easier for certain members of the public who might want to present information. Sometimes it's, Zoom technology is a challenge. So we're looking forward to that. First order of business is to review and approve the minutes from our April meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the April minutes as presented.
Okay.
I second.
It?
I
Thank you.
second.
Is there any discussions or
No comment here.
corrections? Ann?
No corrections.
Okay, neither I. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Okay, public comments. Captain, if you could coordinate any members of the public that would like to comment at this point.
Yes, sir. Maureen Lopes has her hand raised.
Okay. Maureen, could you just repeat your name and state your address, please?
She comes.
She's muted.
There we go. I got bumped out for a second. Thank you all. I would say that I would actually miss these Zoom meetings. I'm sitting here with my pretzels.
Okay.
But it's been so informational. I've really learned a lot. And also, as the chief knows, I've been trying to attend the logistics subcommittee of the Police Accountability Task Force. And most recently, they're taking up the within our existing statutes, if I understand this correctly, what constitutes a major reason that police can stop a vehicle? And Chief, I may be saying this wrong. And what are like secondary reasons? And looking at decisions that were clearly made years ago, reflect that we always should remember as the public, these statutes really are reflecting us, that as a civilization or as a culture, we're making decisions, and some of them are really out of date. The infamous one is that police can stop, I think it's in the state of Connecticut, for fuzzy dice hanging from the rear view mirror. That's considered one of the more egregious reasons. And so now there's a process of going through that so that if a person is stopped for a moving violation, which of course is a safety issue, and other things show up, that makes sense, but not necessarily to stop. And some of the members of the subcommittee are talking about the less involvement sometimes there are between police and the public for very minor issues not related to safety, the better it might be. So I'm encouraged, in fact, by this seems to be a moment in time when people are willing to step back and then step forward. That Branford evidently has now hired a full-time social worker to help address calls around domestic violence, etc. And when I look at the police blog for Madison, it's really stunning how many of those are related to domestic violence calls. So I think there's a possibility for real improvements here in terms of our general culture. So I just want to thank you all for your service also. I think it's very important for citizens to be involved in these discussions.
Maureen, thank you very much. I think I think as a commission, we certainly welcome the participation and engagement. I think just about every meeting, the chief has encouraged people, if they've got questions, concerns, suspicions, pick up the phone and call us, because certainly it's the more we understand and engage with the public, I think the better it's going to be for the whole area of public safety. So thank you for your comments. Any other comments, Chief? I don't know if you'd like to respond at all as well.
Well, I want to thank Maureen for her participation when she attends. I try to give her that shout out to the legislative boards. Yeah, these are interesting times, Maureen. There's a lot of changes coming down the road, and most needed. Just to clarify, primary stop and secondary stop is, you had some departments that were using, listen, you could watch a car and follow behind a car, and you're going to come up with some sort of violation. And that's what they're trying to stop, is somebody trying to get entry into the car to do a search incident to that stop. So what we've done is, under the Racial Profiling Prohibition Project Subcommittee on the traffic redistribution of some of the, I'll say change to some of the laws. It's timely. I think what we'd like to do is focus on primary stops. What did you stop the vehicle? Stopped it for speeding, stopped it for speeding. All the secondary that come up, make that more administrative. It's not going to say we're going to allow vehicles to go down the road that shouldn't be on the road, but that we find that a lot of stops are associated with that, I call it infamous fishing expedition. A good example is that there's a town that borders an inner city in this state where there are over 1,100 stops are made within a year on that border. One summons was issued, and they were for tinted windows. So that's not necessary. That's not what the spirit of law enforcement is that's not the job that we're supposed to do. And that's why that has to be addressed. It's unfortunate. I hope that kind of answers somewhat of the direction the state is taking, along with the people that serve in that board have worked very hard and diligent for that. The mental health component, Madison's going to be doing a hybrid. Not yet. We're still in the development phase. The hybrid that we're going to use is going to be used in relationship with similar-sized departments. That's where either with Yale or with University of New Haven for us in this area. We have, we're going to possibly go with 2, maybe 3 graduate student when they have to do their internships, and have them here for the spring, summer, and fall semester. The town will pay them a stipend. Their management, their field training, their guidance will come from a social worker associated with the university or associated with the town's youth and family services. We're still working that part out, but this will allow us to have psychologists or MSWs available, social workers during a large segment of the day and evening shift. We can have them respond not to threatening complaints, but after we stabilize the home environment, that they will enter in and will follow up casework on the subjects involved. A lot of the cases here in Madison, as you know, involve, either the school system or seniors. So we need to have that follow-up. So that's the approach we're taking. This is still working its way through this, we'll call the development of it, but it's something that the Accountability Task Force really is interested in, because there's a lot of departments similar to the size of the town of Madison. And I myself, just hiring one social worker is not going to fit the bill. We have on average 10 to 15 crisis, psychological or other crisis that involve, or handicap crisis that involve the police department in this community. They come at all different times of day. So having one might not cover it. Might be good for the follow-up, but in the field, we're trying to get as many people that are working during that, particularly that last year in their MSW program, to work within the town as a intern under the supervision of the schools. Outside of that, once again, I thank you for participating. And just a special note, this is National Police Memorial Week. This is where the memorials are held down in Washington. We're up over 100 police officers killed year to date. We've had, I believe, 3 killed within the last 48 hours. So just in our thoughts and prayers, our officers, our men and women and other who work diligently within to do the right thing in law enforcement. Our hats off and prayers to them.
Thank you. Well said. Captain, any other members of the public interested in commenting?
Not at this time, sir.
Okay. Chief, why don't we go into your reports, the finance budget?
Okay. All right, so this is that time of year where we start trying to get the budget down to zero. I recently attended a Board of Selectmen meeting where I was seeking approval for some line transfers and also one special appropriation, one appropriation which is in line with money spent for COVID. The COVID monies are approximately $39,000. That's been approved by the Board of Selectmen. Will now go on to the Board of Finance. I also will be available and present to them the breakdown of how the monies were utilized. The second part of this is that we looked and we went through the wages, made the wage adjustments, and so we could bring that to zero as of June 30th. The third part of that is the highway construction project overtime. That's where you see an officer behind an AT&T truck or construction site. As you know, we budget X amount of dollars there, and we bring in probably 3 times what we budget on average. This is just to bring it to zero for the audit post July 1st. And that was an additional, I believe, $36,106. They also, in that same meeting, approved the hiring of Katie Randall to the second clerk's position in our administrative office. She replaces Flo Pirelli, who moved up to the clerk's position due to the retirement of Val Soul. The second approval was for Holly Burke, who replaced Christy Hodge as the chief's assistant and administrative assistant. Katie Randall has been a dispatcher with us approximately almost 2 years now, and she is in the UPSU union. So she moves over within the same collective bargaining unit, but she's on a different division, which is the clerks. Holly Burke came to us. She was in application with 28 other applicants for the position of chief's assistant. Ms. Burke comes to us with a master's degree in finance from Rutgers and a bachelor's degree from Rutgers. I said it wrong. She has an MBA from Rutgers and she has a bachelor's in finance from Rutgers. And she joins us as a new administrative assistant. So I anticipate one other line item transfer. I guess, John, I'm letting you know about that. And that's going to be, we're going to move some money from the gas line into purchase services. I'll use that to offset any additional repairs on some of the vehicles to get us through July 1st. Outside of that, Mr. Chairman, I do not have any other anticipated line transfers or requests for additional monies to get us to July 1st.
Can I just ask you, on page 2 of the budget, we had an original appropriation for $500,000 on the communication, and then that was obviously netted out. What was the original 500,000? Was that just a reserve for the communications equipment and tower? Remind me again what. how did that get into the budget and then get taken out of the budget? It's under communications.
Communication line, they may have put the debt, CIP, we have, I think there's 3 years left on one of the debt from Motorola Corporation for communication. That very well could be what that is. That's not showing up on my printout. Are you getting that from the
Yeah, it was
actual
in the-
communication line?
Yeah, it's line account 65800V. It's the bottom of the communication on page 2 of the information packet on finance. I mean, it looked like it was just
That's debt.
a formal entry, yeah. But I was just curious what it was. So presumably that would not show up in next year's budget, or is that debt all now paid down? Do we know?
Well, I mean, the other thing I compare it to is that we have our line, our vehicle replacement line in there, and that goes to zero immediately because that we're paying off debt, we're paying off the lease. I'm not sure how they run the communication line as far as the debt. I know that we still have, I believe it's 3 payments left for the towers. That would be phase 2, and I believe we still have debt associated with lease payments for subscriber equipment. That's the handheld radios and mobile units, not only for the police, but fire and ambulance.
Okay,
Yeah, I think you have to go to the, I call it the big book and go into more in depth. But I personally don't go beyond the accounting that they print out. I look at my numbers that I'm liable for and look to bring them to zero come July 1st.
well, at some point I hope to be able to go to the big book, but we'll take this as a good summary at this point. I think some of the challenges that we have, it might be helpful at some point to see how we might provide a kind of a summary page for the budget, just so we can consolidate some of these areas. You've got a couple of them, basically 4: police services, animal control, and communication. Maybe we can provide, we'll talk offline. Maybe we can provide a little more, focused organization for the budget, so it's a little more digestible for us.
What I think is that, I mean, let's look at the line. We did a special appropriation for a highway construction project line. That's where the police officer is on the site of the project, lights, wearing a vest. We charge X amount of dollars, use of the car. We charge for the insurances. We charge for the workman's comp. So essentially, let's just say for simplicity's sake, 50 grand invested usually brings us back in over 100 grand. Now you would think they would just fund the line, but they don't. They put X amount of dollars. We go over sometimes twice the amount, and prior to July 1st, they move into a special appropriation. So for me, what bothers me is I think that the public think, what are those cops doing? They're running all this money, and we're not. We actually brought in twice what was invested by the town. But that's the accounting method that they use. So,
okay.
I mean, if you look at, you have to go to the detail in the book, the detail book page, and that explains it all out. And they go through this process, a lot of checks and balances through the process of Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, and of course the CIP. And then as you go through the books, the generation of the books, before we get to the final, it breaks it down even further. Fair enough, Al or John? I guess that's a pretty good description.
Fair enough, Chief.
Okay. Activity statistics.
Statistics aren't due till July 1st. Last month we did the
that's our
quarter.
quarterly. Okay. Guess we've got a summary of the training. We're still
Joe.
doing all of our
Joe,
training remote.
I'm sorry, what's that? What's
We're
that?
still doing all of our training remote.
No. Some is using best practices and for COVID, safe distancing. We have 2 exceptions right now. Officer Sergeant Jeremy York and Sergeant Doug Harkins are attending the command school for this past week up in Rhode Island at Roger Williams College. That's the NESPAC school. So I'm not sure, I haven't seen how they're setting up the classrooms, but I could assume based on the course description that there's obviously less capacity in the classroom, and that's how they're operating. As far as weapons, things like that, training, that's done on our range or within hands-on. Once again, we're masked up. Joe, would you do the honors of going over the training?
Yes, sir. Good evening. So April, we continue to train where we can, when we can. So we did 181 hours of total training for the month. That included our usual K9 hours and SWAT hours. We have been, again, working with the crisis intervention training continues to be a focus. We're trying to get someone into that class every single time it's available, whether it's their first time through or for a refresher. Sergeant York did attend a basic certification course, and our monthly training to keep in line with our recertification standards. The entire department did rape crisis, sexual assault investigation training. That was done online for our recertification, but everyone is on pace. Recertification has been pushed to 2022 for all officers because of COVID, and we are well within, we're in a perfect place to get everyone recertified come next year.
Great. Is the command school, is that an overnight program?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And I presume there's officers from New England, from what region? Is it a regional program or is it national?
Well, they have them in different locations in the country. This happens to be NESPAC, New England State Police Intelligence Network, in conjunction with all the law enforcement agencies in the New England region. And like University of New Haven, Roger Williams has a very robust criminal / law enforcement program at that school, including graduate level and a PhD. So they host this. They didn't have one last year because of COVID, but now the restrictions list where they were able to, and they like hands-on in a classroom.
Well, one of our keys, I think, we made a decision, I think as a commission a number of years ago, to say, basically to take the position that, our organizational effectiveness edge is going to be our investment in training. And so, I'm pleased that we are able to send particularly individuals who are in a management position and taking on greater responsibilities, to some of these training programs. It is, absolutely, I think a longer term investment in how we provide the capacity and capability of the department. So I think it's very helpful to continue to identify, who would benefit from it, and it's not in any way something that we take for lightly, because we know when we send officers to these programs, somebody's got to cover them. We have, less flexibility manpower wise, but it's absolutely a good investment. So I'm glad we're continuing to do that, or able to resume it. Okay.
I'm anxious to speak with them when they return, because I'm particularly with the Police Accountability and Transparency Act, and probably every state in the country has put some sort of legislation forward. I would love to see how other agencies throughout New England are adapting or changing some of their policies to comply with the new laws, particularly in the area of handicap and mental health. So I'm anxious to see what other agencies are doing in other parts of the country. Well, certainly our New England region. So I'm sure the two gentlemen will bring that back with them.
How many attendees would be there at a course like this, Jack, and how long is it?
It's a week-long course. For us, it's a thrift. It costs us approximately, with accommodations, less than $700 an officer, and they're there for 5 days. They're 8 to 9 hour classrooms. They also service meals. They do it at the campus of Roger Williams, the graduate level. I can only anticipate, I think in their heyday, I've seen 60 to 100 people participate. I would have to believe it's a lot less now.
Is it regional to the Northeast, or is there a mix there from across the US?
Well, I think that every group of states has some organization. I know this from my days in the state police, regions that cover certain areas of like the Southwest, Southwest Central, New England, Midwest, Northwest Corridor. Florida itself has their own because it's just so large. Texas has basically their own, they're so large.
So in addition to the academic benefit and the learning skills, especially during these difficult times, you've got a great amount of relationship building and comparing similar departments and comparing ideas to see how you come up with a solution. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I always try to find a city that's has municipal agencies in the suburbs similar to our size, similar impacts. You know, particularly with a major route like 95 or 91 going through them, because I like to see how they deal, or are we doing similar trends in crime? Do we have similar trends in traffic issues and so forth? And generally, we do. So we kind of pick up, we glean information from each other. It's kind of interesting.
Do they have the graduation dinner in Newport?
Say that again?
Do they have the graduation dinner in Newport?
I send them off and ask them to behave.
Okay, good. Okay, monthly traffic report.
Okay, I have Jeremy was able to put this together before he left. For the month of April, there were 27 reported motor vehicle accidents with 5 involving injuries. The leading cause of motor vehicle accidents involved unsafe movements and animal strikes or debris in the roadway. There were 0 DWI and 0 fatal motor vehicle accidents for the month. There were 10 motor vehicle accidents that occurred on private property. Any
Okay.
questions?
Nope. Okay,
Okay,
good.
community calendar.
Community calendar.
Well, it's similar to where we were last meeting, except the discussion is on July 4th, the parade, or the fireworks. So I think at this point we're leaning towards the events occurring, except that my understanding is that prior to May 24th, they may extend the governor's emergency powers for another 2 months. I'm not quite sure how that's going to affect that. We're meeting weekly on this. We have some time if we had to cancel the events. We've had a discussion as late as 2 days ago with the organizers. The concert is off. The concert is not going to occur. So we're looking at the parade. The parade kicks off on the 4th of July. The fireworks are scheduled for the 2nd, which would be the Friday night. The rain date is the Monday night. You know, there was some discussion that we make this a community event, meaning less than what we've had in the past with the fireworks, is we've had probably, I don't know, Joe, 60,000 plus people between all the various points, observation points. You got to remember, each one of the beaches, not including the surf club, has 8,000 to 10,000 people gathered, and they rush in within the 45 minutes, hour before it starts, and rush out. This year, we're not having the buses transport people. We're not doing the shuttles. We're going to extend out the safety points, diversionary route. We want to make sure that Route 1 is still open for all our businesses in town that are operating on those days and nights. You know, so it's going to be a challenge. It won't be easy, but we're still trying to put this together. But we have all the resources of the town. We have the elected officials that are involved in it that are working hard. And I think between myself and Sam and Joe and others that we'll get it going. We'll get it done.
Steve,
Is
what
there-
other towns are hosting their fireworks?
Some yes, some no.
Okay.
Right. Oh, so when I asked the no's were Old Sabre financially, we're not doing it. You know, as an example. Other ones, just participation. A lot of them have, like example, the parades. Most of the participating bands come from external from the town, so they're not performing this year, or that, you know, due to COVID.
Mhm.
So there are some challenges. So I think that we're looking at it maybe as a more community event, less in the influx from the external. Not that we're not trying to prevent people from coming to town, but we're just not trying to build it up so that we get as big a crowd as we normally get.
how is the decision going to be made about the parade? Is that a Board of Selectmen decision? How's that going to work?
Well, ultimately, the signatures that go on the fireworks and go on the parade come from myself and Sam DeBura, the fire marshal, and also for the special event. There are a couple other. Joe most certainly weighs in and does a lot of the homework on the background right now. I sat with Sam today, talked briefly about it. You know, it's almost every day we're trying to figure out how we're going to go from point A to point B and make this happen. But I would say it looks like it's going to happen. We're just trying to make sure that we do it as safely as we can, as less intrusive to the town and the citizen as we can. But there is the possibility that maybe it might get canceled. We're not there yet.
Okay. That's understandable that this is a time when you're talking about crowds and, you know, governor's emergency authority, flexibility is the key word, I think with this. So anyway, I presume we'll have another, you know, crack at discussing it for the June commission meeting, but thank you for the update on that. Okay, is there anything else, Chief, on the community that we should be aware of?
Just the only thing with regional shared services I have is I did talk with the chief in Clinton. He's going to put together a meeting with us to discuss. He'd like to share some of our towers for their rebuild of their own radio system. So once his engineering study comes in, we'll have something more conclusive to discuss.
Okay. Any correspondence, Chief? There is none included in the packet.
I do not have any.
Okay. You've got the traffic issues. Is there anything we need to cover on that? Okay.
Mostly inquiries. Once again, Signal Hill and Route 1. Discussion with some of the folks north of Route 1 on Signal Hill as to, is it possible for a crosswalk or a fixed crossing light? And I explained to them the last time we had it studied, we talked about sight lines, speed, and the visibility of the intersection from oncoming traffic, depending on what the speed limit is. They were very, they understood. I told them I'll have another discussion with DOT. I had one last week, as a matter of fact, on Route 1. Also, there's inquiries for those speed signs around various neighborhoods. I mean, you know, main roads here in the town of Madison. I think that I'm going to ask probably to the first select woman and Al, most certainly yourself and John will be aware. I think we perhaps use some of the funding the town has received to purchase. I could use about 14 of those speed signs at various locations throughout this town. And I've been buying them 2 a year coming out of my own budget, although they weren't planned for. I bought them because of the interest from the neighborhoods to slow down traffic calming. I know we talked last year about it being a budget, that we possibly would budget for it. And we'd had that discussion, it didn't happen. So I think that if we could outright buy at least a dozen of these signs, I have locations. I have 2 locations of Route 1, Route 79, Warpus. I can go on. It's like a Green Hill, most certainly. And you also need additional signage on various locations where we had a couple of multi-accident scenes within the last 3 months. Has to go to the visibility, you know, with the sight lines, people's overgrown bushes, things like that. So there's some work to be done there, but I'd love to have the tools to accomplish that work. And part of that is to have those devices.
Those devices work, Chief.
Pardon?
Those devices work.
They do. I know that. I know that. But I mean, they're $2,600 wholesale on average when you buy that number of them. Individually, they're up 3 to 5, depending what you'd like in them. It's something we could synchronize. They are somewhat self-sufficient with the solar, unless somebody goes in and tries to willfully damage them, which occurs once in a while, such as the Green Hill Road one. But yes, I'd like to be able to get those. The second part to this is, so I had a discussion with Nick Walsh, who's one of the DOT engineer project directors. They're going to start repaving from, we'll call it the hill by the diner in the town of Guilford all the way to Route 79. And both directions. If you notice now, they're doing all the drains on Route 1 past the golf course. You probably see them in there laying concrete. So I had a discussion with him. He started off, he wondered if I wanted to keep the crosswalk down by the car dealerships. I explained to him that's been there for quite a period of time. Do some folks use it? Of course they do. They drop their cars off, then cross, go over to Nick's or the shopping center. So I asked that, he said, well, then I'll redo it. I said, are you going to redo it? Or just, I would hope with the new standards and warning devices. He said, absolutely. I then made the inquiry into West Wharf, where it crosses the street at Route 1. And they said they would do that also. So remember we had the discussion about putting the crosswalk in there, and there was another project involved going somewhere up West Wharf involving the golf course and development. I think if we can get that put there paid for by the state, we should take it.
What do we need to have it happen?
Well, they're going to do it within the project. The project was going to start in about 3 months. So what they'll do is they'll put that in using the ramps that already exist coming down Route 1 and West Wharf onto the sidewalks.
Good. Okay. So presumably by the end of the summer, the paving is going to, that's not going to be a quick paving job, I would imagine. When do you anticipate it starting?
He said he's going to start within 2 or 3 months. That's why they've already started doing the catch basins.
Mhm.
But having worked for the state of Connecticut, Murphy was an optimist.
Mhm.
Murphy's Law. So I would like to say that it gets done before the end of the summer. My guess will probably be done before the snow flies.
Okay. Beat the asphalt plant's closing. Okay, under new business, is there any COVID updates that we should be aware of?
We're in a good place in town. I think the state of Connecticut had 2 new cases the other day. Majority of the state is getting vaccinated. Majority of this town has been vaccinated. So we're in a pretty good place. Obviously, there's a lot of external factors that could affect that. But I think as far as supplies, PPE and stuff, we're robust now. We planned out for sources. I would think that between all the service chiefs, Peggy's office, and others, we've got our hands around this. I think we're in a good place.
Good.
The only other caveat to this is that there's a strike planned by 1199 collective bargaining for most of the healthcare facilities. It does affect 2 facilities here in the town of Madison. We don't anticipate any issues, but that's probably going to happen. To those folks that work in those assisted livings and others, special needs, I mean, they worked hard. They came to work. A lot of folks got sick that were employed by those facilities. Not to mention the folks within the facility or those that passed. So I'm not sure what their issue is. I try not to get involved in it, but other than the safety point of them to peacefully protest. So I don't anticipate any issues. We've been in contact with other agencies that have. So we're just going to have additional personnel available. We're not going to go to the facilities unless we're called for violence or other issue. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Okay, good. Is there any update, Chief, from your participation on any of the state task force that you want to share at this point?
Well, we're still on the racial profiling, the Prohibition Project. Most of the secondary stops and primary stops, that's the changes that we've made the changes and submitted them to the legislature for their review and general law for their review. Although some of those committees are now out of session. We're not sure when they'll be called back. But we've done that, our part there, as to Maureen and I spoke earlier about. The mental health component, that subcommittee, we're going to come up, we have essentially 4 different working models we'd like to pursue. I mentioned one that involves a department our size, which we're going to take the lead on. The second part to that is that there are some outreach programs and others, other areas of the 41 changes, additional changes in the law that I think it's going to move slow. Some things have been put on the back burner not put in the back burner, but they've slowed down the date of implementation, and rightfully so, because it involves more study and expense. I think you're going to find a lot of the smaller communities are going to have no problem. Well, they're going to have financially as a problem, but they're going to comply with the law and do the best they can to make those sunset dates. A lot of the cities they're not going to be able to do it in time. So I think that the time limit has been given to accommodate most certainly the larger cities. There's still they're still out on some of the discussion, the financial impact, and how they'll accomplish some of the tasks that they put down in writing. But now it needs to go through different processes to see what is the impact of hiring, hypothetically Hartford hiring several social workers or MSWs or psychologists, and how do we apply that to a 24/7 response to the community, which has X amount of percentage of people in crisis or psychological issues. So I think they're figuring it out. I would like to think probably within 18 months, all the laws that they propose will probably be operational by then.
You're muted, Ed.
What was that?
But of course,
Ed was muted.
and rightly so, probably. But I was going to say, I think when this process started, I think one of the more encouraging things was there was going to be a sense that that a lot more input was needed before this law was effectively translated and implemented. And I think it is helpful to have the right group of people working their way through it and trying to understand, what it means, what was this law that we passed mean, and how is it going to be implemented? So I think to the fact that there's some measured discussion of it, I think that's positive, because you're going to have something that is not only effective but is also doable. So I'm glad the process is continuing to evolve.
There's been some areas that, example of special needs, communicating a crime scene. We have communication to get to dispatch with a complaint or request for service or emergency. You might remember the campaign for you could text 911 if you can't speak. You might remember that campaign, and Connecticut was very robust. And throughout the country. But now we have, when the officers engage folks there, and let's say there's both parents are deaf within a household, when we respond for emergency, and the officers may probably not know sign language. And we hope that they're able to, we have to, very simplistic thing, remove your mask so you read lips, but it's going to slow down the process. So those folks have a right, and most certainly that we accommodate them. And I'm trying to figure out, and most certainly, although we put it into the bill, is how we can financially get that done. As terrible as you have to put a financial aspect to it, but you can't just put that on the communities to do it. And it's okay to have somebody maybe on call if you can accomplish that, but I don't know how a larger city would do that.
Well, that's, I think with a lot of this, there's absolutely a price tag that goes with it. And that's going to be, a real challenge for a number of communities, including, depending on what comes out, including potentially Madison. So it's still very much, I understand, a work in process. So, but again, we appreciate your active participation on this committee, and it's helpful to, keep us informed in terms of how you see this thing, moving forward. But we appreciate it. Okay. Chief, is there anything else we need to cover before? I know as I mentioned, we want to have a brief executive session meeting, and I'm sensitive to a couple of people have a hard stop for some events, after our regular meeting. So is there anything else you think we need to cover before we move along in the agenda?
I think we've done well, sir. We're good.
Okay. Commissioner comments. Tom?
Yeah, I was just thinking in relation to the chief's request for those 14 to 16 signs, which I think would be a huge benefit for the town. Al, for your sake, last year, the police overtime budget in New York City was $404 million. Ours is not. And perhaps somewhere recognizing what the chief has done, they might find a way to get a group discount on 14 or 15 of those signs, because as John has said, they pay dividends from the moment you got them up.
Okay, well, yeah, that might be something that we have a more, robust discussion, particularly, I don't want to minimize the fact that there's an immediate need, but it also might be helpful for us to have, a discussion going into the fall budget planning process to say, let's look at where these items fall, such as this, under a capital budget, and, build a ramp so that, where we have issues like needs like this, we're in the same cycle with the budget process, as opposed to, we need a special request or hat in hand. I'm sure, John, there's some town reserves, but those are for absolute unforeseen emergencies, and it's tough to say a stop sign or multiple stop, signs fall into an unforeseen emergency, but somehow we've got to build a little more flexibility. I think it'd be helpful to build a little more flexibility so that if we end up during the year needing to make an investment in signs like this, and as you said, they are effective, we're able to do it, as opposed to, boy, we'll get around to that, next year. I mean, some of these are a little more urgent and current than that, but it's a good point, Tom. So, Ian, any comment?
No, I don't have any comments tonight.
Okay, good. My only comment is again to reiterate, on behalf of the commission and the other finance and Board of Selectmen representatives, this is Law Enforcement Appreciation Week, Chief. We don't minimize that. We might, perhaps we should have had a little more formal acknowledgement of it, but it is not something, any of us take for granted. I know certainly you've recognized that in terms of, the staff and in your department, but it is something that it's a kind of a somber reminder that there are some people who, go to work every day, and their life is at a heck of a lot more risk than other very, very, important jobs in our community. So anyway, thank you and your officers for their service. Can I entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting to move into executive session?
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's police commissioners meeting to go into executive session.
Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Okay. Now, Captain, can you or Ann help us on the technology side?